Hi, I'm Morgan Hines. I'm in the PhocusWire studio at Phocuswright Europe, and I'm here with Damien Cramer of Nuvei. Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, Morgan. Thanks for that.
We're going to chat about developments in the payments space, which is a pretty rich topic area. So let's dive in. I want to know about how the space has evolved in the last 5 years or so, particularly with technology changes.
Yeah, so I think a couple of really key things. Obviously, as we came out of COVID, and we don't want to talk about that anymore, but as we came out of COVID, it created a really significant shift in the market as people really adopted significantly digital payments and the digital payment experience because they were stuck at home and they were doing things in different ways. Aligned to that was this enormous expansion of local payment methods. And so whilst, Visa and MasterCard and those major card schemes remain kind of core to a whole lot of stuff that we do in travel and a whole lot of stuff within payments, there's this ever expanding component of local payment methods. And so that's been, I think, the really fundamental change across this market, across an e-commerce market in general, and travel as a truly global market being in a position where they can support a whole range of payment methods. I think the other thing that everybody's much more conscious of now is also distribution and distributing your risk and being in a position where you have multiple players. The reality is, as much as we would like to, we can't do 100% of everybody's volume depending on what market they're in.
That makes sense. So when you're talking about how this has evolved and different digital payment methods, how does cryptocurrency play into how payments have changed?
Yeah, so we think about cryptocurrency in a couple of different ways. I think obviously there's the acceptance part of this, and I think that probably 5 or so years ago, it was very nascent, and we had a number of clients and organizations looking at, I've got people that want to pay me in crypto. Can we do this? Can we do this?
Yeah.
And most of those really never got off the ground because the reality was that whilst they might be happy to get paid in crypto, the variability and the challenges with that was they also didn't want to hold crypto. And so the value proposition became quite different. They still wanted to be paid in fiat. That's evolved, I think, and evolving pretty significantly at the moment as crypto becomes more mainstream. And so the ability and the speed of those transactions and the consistency or the ability to kind of track that to fiat currency is particularly through stable coins, et cetera, is becoming more profound. And so I think that adoption will start to increase and become more mainstream.
Okay.
I think the second piece is then to think about, in some cases, particularly for things like hospitality, does crypto represent the ability or the capacity to be able to distribute funds out to your hoteliers, for example? So the cost of moving money still in a traditional way from Europe to America can be quite expensive. Crypto provides an opportunity to do that in a much more efficient way.
Got it. And so how do you think that's going to change in the next 5 years or so?
Well, I think what you'll start to see is see tangible, real adoption in a mainstream perspective. It's interesting, a lot of Nuvei's DNA is based on the gaming industry. And I would say that that's 5 years ahead of where a lot of travel is. It's just on-ramping and off-ramping your money via crypto in the gaming world is just so much more mainstream. And so we see a real opportunity, given the experience that we've got in gaming, to go, how do we support and grow that in the travel space? Obviously, the size of the tickets and these kinds of things and the nature of the transaction being deferred delivery is a lot different, but that opportunity, I think, is really significant. So I think we'll see much higher levels of adoption just going forward in the next 5 years now. I think it's beyond the fad phase.
Yeah, so it sounds like pretty quick pace of change going forward. And then the other technology that's obviously been buzzing for the last few years is AI. So how does generative AI and agentic AI play into payments and its evolution?
Yeah, so there's lots happening. At Nuvei, we're pretty conscious that we don't see ourselves necessarily as the experts. I've sat in lots of sessions this week about AI and I've learned a huge amount. We're doing lots in the background. We're not necessarily talking about that at this particular point in time, to be frank, because we think that there are great experts out there in the market and great things happening that people are much better positioned to do that. But I think, you see that at the front end of the experience now, in AI, from the perspective of the booking processes services and those kinds of things. There's some great, there's some really great concepts and great innovation going on. You start to see some things happening in places in checkout, with in checkout processes. I think Visa launched a couple of months ago their AI program where it becomes an agent, essentially potentially being able to make the purchase for you, or in the case of travel, be able to facilitate the booking for you based on your own particular constraints. I think that's really exciting. I think it's mind-blowing as to what the possibilities are.
Yeah. So how do you think payment solutions can improve conversion for travel brands?
So some research that we did at a couple of years ago, but it still remains today. We're currently updating at the moment. We don't think it's going to change significantly. But travel, it's such an emotional kind of purchase for most people, and it's quite a large purchase for most people. And so the data and the research that we did said that 74% of customers will not proceed with a transaction booking if their preferred payment method doesn't exist.
That's pretty high percentage.
And that's massive. There's a massive card abandonment issue in travel already. And so if you're not offering payment, and again, for you in the US or for me in Singapore, a Visa card or a MasterCard or stuff is standard. That's okay. But if I'm a customer in South Korea, or if I'm a customer in Brazil, or I'm a customer in India, and the payment option that's very localized to me is not available, I'm probably going to go and find a provider that will provide me the payment method that I trust and that I understand for such a large purchase. So again, there's this enormous trail of alternative payment methods expanding, and this customer expectation that, hey, if I'm going to part with a reasonably significant proportion of my money for quite an emotional purchase, I want to be in a position where I'm using a payment method that I trust and understand.
So obviously, alternative payment methods are also evolving. What changes are you seeing there?
I think that they're becoming, so there's some consolidation going on, which is good. I think Nuvei, we talk about the fact that we support more than 700 local payment methods, right? Now that's an enormous, so that's enormous. What you're starting to see is some interoperability around that.
Okay.
I come from Singapore, and in the Asia Pacific region, there's a lot of work being done across the ASEAN market, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, where my ability to say come from Singapore with my digital wallet and be able to scan a QR code in Thailand and be able to make a purchase through their local wallet, but utilizing their local wallet infrastructure, but connecting to my local wallet in Singapore, means that all of a sudden my transaction from a cross-border perspective is available that otherwise I would have to pull out my traditional card. So we're starting to see a bit more interoperability, but I think Asia's a leader in that because they're so far advanced on that wallet technology, and QR is a really good method to enable that.
So with that in mind, how far are we from kind of some level of standardization of payments across the globe?
Well, I think that'd be the day that that's why I probably don't have a job if we get standardization. At the end of the day, I think we're a long, long way away from that. And again, I think crypto and these kinds of things that are truly global capabilities are fantastic. But let's again remember, the traditional payment methods provide that interoperability. Let's not underestimate the ability for me to go onto a website tomorrow to book a hotel in southern Chile and know that I'll turn with my Visa card or my MasterCard or my American Express card and know that I can turn up and be confident, that transaction's gone through, the merchant's going to supply that to me. Let's not underestimate that to a great extent, standardization already exists. I think in the digital space, it's going to evolve though. Yeah,
that's really interesting. What's your take on the super wallet?
So super wallets from a travel perspective, I think is really, really interesting. What I think about is that travel invented the concept of loyalty. And wallets thrive also on the basis often of loyalty. The wallet survives because it's the first thing you think about as a payment method. And so there's a lot of correlation in super wallets in many markets, and I'll particularly call out Asia and Southeast Asia where I'm based, whereby they are just embedded as my core payment method. And if you think about something like, I use AirAsia as an example, they developed their wallet off the back of AirAsia as the airline, and now that's sort of a real super wallet capability. I can do everything with that. And you see, I think there's a great opportunity, particularly for airlines that are really good in that loyalty space, and they're starting to do more bolt-on capability around that. And then obviously that provides them the ability to understand their customer a lot better, have that customer much more embedded in their brand and much more loyal to that. So that super wallet thing, again, I think is years ahead to a great extent in markets like Malaysia, Singapore, Japan. There's some really great examples of that.
And obviously digital wallets are advancing elsewhere. EU regulation is stipulating digital wallets, but they're not really using existing ones like Apple and Google that consumers are already using. So how do you anticipate that kind of transition to go?
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of I think ways in which, particularly in Europe, because of things like GDPR, because of just the euro as the basis of currency and stuff, there's lots of opportunity, but we also know that it's really hard to get that whole thing to move. It's starting to, with some evolution, I think, of some of those very local payment methods into a sort of a European wallet program called Wiro, which we're very supportive of and trying to create consistency around that. But again, Europe's got a pretty mature payment method processes and stuff that go on. You kind of need to have a burning platform. It's very contrasting again with Southeast Asia that had this huge underbanked population that all of a sudden went mobile and so had this adoption kind of acceleration.
Kind of a leapfrog moment.
The foundations of that don't exist in a market like Europe. So that evolution is going to be different.
So to what degree does kind of legacy system or legacy habit impede progress for payments in more developed?
I think the nature of the 700 alternative payment methods tells you that if you're offering the right product in the right way, that as a consumer locally I understand and I trust, that adoption can happen. I think there's examples in sort of obviously there's lots of examples in developing markets where things have just gone skyrocketed. If you look at, say, Pix in Brazil, right, it went from nothing to kind of covering the whole thing. But even in a market I think like Sweden, I think Swish is 93% or some enormous percentage of consumers trust and see that. So it's providing a capability. And I think it's mobile embedded, it's in your face, it's sort of front of mind. And also if it's offering other capabilities for you beyond just payment and providing that simple kind of one-stop entry point for a lot of stuff, then it makes a lot of sense that adoption can happen. But consumers vote with their, I was going to say they vote with their feet, but they vote with their thumbs, right? As far as this process goes.
And their dollars, I guess, or whatever currency.
That's right.
So what do you think payments is going to look like 5 years down the road?
So a couple of things. I think there still remains in many parts of the world a really significant movement that's still got to happen away from cash. Right, and that's as close as places like Southern Europe, where cash is still really highly adopted. So there's going to be this ongoing and continued evolution away, I think, from cash to a great extent. I think then you've got to understand again whether that becomes the extent to which that becomes a situation of again, adoption of wallets and local payment methods, or again, whether crypto further potentially leapfrogs that as well. I don't know. I know that I've worked in payments for 25 years, and if I look at what was happening 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 25 years ago, I just know that there's a continuing evolution. This does not stay the same. Exactly, and how it's going to evolve, I'm not going to be the complete predictor of that. I just know that I'm going to be back. I mean, if I'm here in 5 years' time, it will look a lot different.
And do you think that if things kind of tend more towards standardization or having a way for people to be comfortable with paying for things, do you think that travel will see more bookings as a result of that?
I mean, I think travel's the kind of the fundamental global e-commerce based market, right? Before we were buying things off, large marketplaces and doing a whole lot of online shopping for clothes or shoes or whatever else we do, we were always booking travel, right? That payment. So that kind of requirement and expectation remains. I think that the technology and the layers that got us there to some extent can sometimes hinder that, the way in which travel has been distributed for many years. I think that's a longer play to kind of unpick that and make that more efficient. So it becomes a bit of a layered process, is how do you embed how do you embed payments effectively in what's still architecturally quite often a platform and processes and things that have been going on for many, many years, just because the nature of travel as a global business has been around for so many years. It's quite different if you think about that from, again, a gaming market or even an e-commerce market that's maybe only global e-commerce market for shoes and clothes and other, usable goods that might only be 10 or 15 years old. Travel, 40, 50 years old.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Morgan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheers.